Hello students, this is Amrita, MPT Cardiovascular and Pulmonary Specialty. I've done my bachelor's and master's from BAPMS College of Physiotherapy, which is located in Visakhapatnam. I'm currently working as a project associate in Prakara. So today we'll be talking about a very interesting topic, which is heart rate regulation. I'm not saying a heart rate regulation is very interesting because I belong to the Department of Cardiology, but actually this regulation of heart rate seems very interesting because why not? Physiology is always interesting. So before we get into the topic, I think it's quite ethical to wait for some time so that the remaining students join the webinar. So by the time, I just want your students to comment on what year you belong to so that it will be easy for me to talk. And also please comment on what part of India you belong to, like you belong to AP or Telangana, Karnataka, Bengaluru, like you get the point, right? Yeah, so we will talk about what heart rate regulation is. Okay. So firstly, before entering into the topic, I have a question for you. What heart rate regulation is? Okay. See, I know that the webinar is completely related to heart rate regulation. Now you people might be confused why I am asking this question again before starting the webinar. The thing is, before knowing in detail about the heart rate regulation, I just want people to know the basic concept of heart rate regulation. Okay. Sorry. Okay, we'll just go back to the reel that we were discussing right now. So Maya, this girl, she was being chased by a dog, and as she was being chased by a dog, her heart rate started to increase. Now the reel ended on the note wherein our very own Gayatri ma'am told that to know how Maya's heart rate got down or it came back to normal, to know about that, you'll have to join our webinar. Right? Before answering the question how Maya's heart rate has come down, I just want to talk about what heart rate has increased. Okay, right. So here we have two things. Okay, so the heart rate was increased because of two reasons. Okay, now what are these two reasons? Okay, number one, it's the hormones. Okay, so while Maya was being chased, obviously Maya will be afraid. She will be in a very stressful situation. So let's just talk in common. Okay, whenever we are stressed or whenever we are afraid or worried about something, obviously what happens to our heart rate? The heart rate will increase. So this is one reason why Maya's heart rate might have increased. Okay, coming to the second reason is Maya is actually jogging. Okay, Maya was jogging, and as the dog started to chase her, she started to run. So when she's running, that means the musculature of her lower limb. Okay. So if you go to the muscle physiology, the lower limbs are in active motion. And when the muscle is in active motion, or when the muscle is active rather, it would need abundant oxygen. Right? So the oxygen is like a food to the muscle. If the muscle has to work, it needs oxygen. But the thing with the oxygen is oxygen directly cannot go to the muscle. It needs some transport system. Now, this transport system over here we have is the blood. So, if the muscle needs more amount of oxygen, obviously the blood has to increase. Now, how will the blood increase? The blood will increase if the heart rate increases. So these are the two reasons why Maya's heart rate has increased. So first one is the hormones, and second one is the muscle activity or the muscle physiology, whatever is being happening. Okay. Now we know why the heart rate of Maya has increased. Now the question is, why did or how did the heart rate come down? Okay, right. There will be a number of factors for this. Our body itself, it constitutes of various centers. Okay, all these centers, what they do is they work together in order to bring the heart rate to normal. Okay, I'll give you an example. There are some activities. For example, let's just say a person is exercising. Okay. When a person is exercising, obviously, just like the Maya's example, when a person is exercising, they'll need abundant oxygen. So, in order to reach the abundant oxygen, obviously, the heart has to pump the blood. See, the normal heart rate that we know is 72 beats per minute. Right? If the heart beats at this pace, then obviously, the oxygen that's being delivered to the muscle will not be sufficient. There will be oxygen depletion in the muscle. So obviously the heart rate has to increase. So as I've mentioned, in our body, we have various centers. All these centers, what they do is because the body is demanding for more amount of oxygen or maybe the blood, what these systems do is they will increase your heart rate. Okay, now the heart rate has increased. Now, increased heart rate could be risky. It might lead to heart failure. So, this increased heart rate should come down to normal, right? So, let me erase this. So, if you take a graph, okay, so 72 was normal, okay. Now, what happened to the heart rate? The body demanded for more blood, so the heart rate increased. This increased heart rate could be dangerous. So, in order to decrease this, the centers work together in order to maintain this 72 beats per minute. Okay. See, simple logic. I don't want you people to stress out. Whenever your heart rate is being increased, these centers bring back the heart rate to normal. Or whenever your heart rate is dropping below the normal, like below the 72 beats per minute, then your centers, all the centers again work together in order to bring the heart rate to normal. So maintenance of this heart rate in a normal pace or in a normal proportion is called as the heart rate regulation. So this is the brief structure I just want to give you people about the heart rate regulation. We'll see in detail what centers are actually working in order to maintain this heart rate, and also we'll see why this heart rate regulation is important. Actually, our next question is the same. Why should the heart rate be regulated? See, as I mentioned, let's just say the heart rate is being increased more than 72. It has reached some 100 beats per minute, or maybe let's just say some 110 beats per minute. Now, as the heart rate increases, like when the patient hits this tachycardia, which is increased heart rate, what actually happens? There is a chance that at one point the heart might fail. There might be a chance for a heart failure. Okay? Or maybe, let's just say the heart rate is dropping down. It's getting down more than the 72 beats per minute, maybe 60 or maybe just say 50 or 45. What happens? Again, it will lead to heart failure and again the patient might die. So, we cannot let our very own Maya die instead in terms of increased heart rate or decreased heart rate. So, in order to maintain this heart rate normally and to make a person survive, this heart rate should be regulated. So now you know what heart rate regulation is, and you also know why the heart rate should be regulated. Right. So I have a question over here. It's a very quite basic question. Actually, the thing is, when we have decided this concept of heart rate regulation, a webinar to be done on this heart rate regulation, they have been posting a bunch of questions in our WhatsApp group. Okay, if you haven't joined our WhatsApp group, I request you to join our WhatsApp group because every day you'll have a new or interesting question to learn from it, to answer in it. So join the WhatsApp group. You'll have the link in the comment section. So yeah, going back to the WhatsApp group, so we have been posting questions relevant to the webinar. And to my surprise, unfortunately, the majority of the answers given by the students are wrong. Okay, so I felt really heartbroken to know that the students' knowledge in terms of the heart rate regulation or maybe the cardiology itself is too low. But don't worry, by the end of this session, you people will have a great knowledge on what heart rate regulation is. So yeah, coming back to our question, what controls the heart rate? I want the students to answer this very basic question because I was quite disappointed with the answers given in the WhatsApp group. Don't worry, I'll actually post the questions, whatever are posted in the WhatsApp group here in this webinar, and I'll also discuss the answers with you. Don't worry. But for now, I want you people to answer this question. What controls the heart rate? Is it the cardiovascular system or is it the nervous system? Comment down. Yeah, we have got an answer. Nervous system. Very good. I'm quite impressed. See, I don't want your students to get confused over here. See, heart rate and heartbeat are completely two different entities. Okay. Now, what is a heartbeat? Heartbeat is one contraction and one relaxation that's being done in your heart. That is called as your heartbeat. Okay. Now, what is the heart rate? The pace, see the pace at which the heart beats per minute. Okay. For 1 minute, how many beats are taking place? That is called as the heart rate. So heartbeat is contraction and relaxation of the heart musculature, whereas the heart rate is the amount of times the heart is beating, or rather it's contracting for a minute. Okay. Now the heart rate, sorry, the heartbeat, it will be completely controlled by the heart itself. There is no doubt about it. The heart is responsible for the contraction and the relaxation of the muscle. Okay? Relaxation of the muscle. Now, coming to the heart rate, however, the centers of the heart rate are situated in medulla. Okay? It's situated in the medulla oblongata. So it's your nervous system which is responsible for your heart rate, and it's never your cardiovascular system which is responsible for your heart rate. Never get confused. Heart rate is always monitored or maintained or regulated by the nervous system. Right. Let's just go deep into our session of heart rate regulation. Now, to maintain the heart rate or to regulate the heart rate, rather, we have completely three different systems. We have ANS regulation, we have hormonal regulation, and we have vasomotor regulation. See, the concept of regulation of heart rate is very easy. Okay, as I've said, medulla is the center. Okay, doesn't matter what system we are talking about, let it be the ANS regulation or the hormonal regulation or the vasomotor regulation. Ultimately, the center will be the medulla, and ultimately, the organ which is receiving the impulses would be the heart. Okay, now consider this medulla as a strict mother. Okay, and consider this heart as a child. Now, let's just say when a child runs so fast, okay, like they're roaming from here and there, like when I was a kid, I used to run a lot, I used to be very active and energetic. And when I used to be like that, my mother used to always try to control me. She used to calm down me. She used to make me sit somewhere to relax and everything. This is because she will be tense that I might just get hit to something or I might just get exhausted. In the same way, the medulla, what it does is when the heart rate is being increased, when the heart rate increases, what the medulla will do, it will send some signals to the heart in order to decrease the heart rate. In the same way, when the heart rate is low, let's just say the heart rate is low. Now, when the heart rate is low, what actually happens is, okay, let's just say I'm being very lazy, I'm not doing my work properly. What will my mother do? My mother will start to motivate me. She'll encourage me. She'll ask me to be cheerful, she'll make me to be enjoyful and everything. Okay, that's what the medulla again does. When the heart rate is dropping down, then the medulla will again send signals to the heart to increase the heart rate. Okay, so I hope you're getting the point. When the heart rate is being increased, the medulla will send signals to decrease the heart rate or maybe to bring the heart rate to normal. And if the heart rate is dropping down, then the medulla will again send signals in order to increase the heart rate. So the medulla is the center which actually maintains the heart rate at one pace. Okay, right. So we'll see in detail about each system. Okay, first we will be talking about the ANS regulation or the autonomic nervous system regulation of the heart rate, which is very important regulatory system. If you understand the ANS regulation, the remaining two regulations are quite easy to understand. Okay, right. So we'll go back to our very own medulla. Okay. So medulla has cardio-regulatory centers. Now, what are these cardio-regulatory centers? There are two types of cardio-regulatory centers. One center will increase your heart rate, one center will decrease your heart rate. Now, if you have to name this, the increased one is the acceleratory center, and the center that is decreasing the heart rate is your inhibitory center. There is no confusion, okay? Acceleratory means the heart rate is being increased. Inhibitory means the heart rate is being decreased. Now, if we come back to the autonomic nervous system, we all know that the autonomic nervous system constitutes of two components, which is the sympathetic and the parasympathetic pathway. Now, what is this sympathetic pathway and what is this parasympathetic pathway? Sympathetic pathway is nothing but the acceleratory center, and the parasympathetic pathway is nothing but the inhibitory center. That is, the sympathetic pathway enables increase in the heart rate, and the parasympathetic system or the pathway leads to the decrease in the heart rate. Okay, see, I've given here. So in the sympathetic pathway, what actually happens is the heart rate will increase. So there will be some signals sent to the medulla in order to increase the heart rate. See, let me show you the diagram. So, if you see here, we have the brain over here. Okay, in the brain over here, we have the medulla. Okay, so what actually happens is whenever there is increase in the heart rate, when the heart rate is being increased, or when the heart demands increase in the heart rate, rather, what actually happens is some sensory impulses will go to the medulla. Okay, some sensory impulses from the heart will go to the medulla, and they will trigger the sympathetic pathway. Here we have two centers over here. We have this is the sympathetic, this is the parasympathetic. Okay. So what actually happens is, because we need increase in the heart rate, what actually happens is the information will be sent to the sympathetic pathway. Now, this sympathetic pathway, once it receives the information, what it will do is, it will send some collaterals back to the heart in order to increase the heart rate. I'll tell you in detail what signals are going, how these signals are going, and how the signals are coming back and how the heart rate is increasing. But for now, just remember that there are some signals that are being sent from the heart. If you want to increase the heart rate, it is going to the sympathetic center. And if you want to decrease the heart rate, it is going to the parasympathetic system or the parasympathetic pathway. Okay. So, whenever you want an increase in the heart rate, you will have to, the parasympathetic. So whenever you want to increase the heart rate, the sympathetic pathway comes into action, and whenever you want to decrease the heart rate, the parasympathetic system comes into action. Okay, right. I know it's quite confusing to remember all these things, so I have come with a short form, which is nothing but sit. So what is this sit over here? See, this sympathetic pathway, see, we have understood that heart rate is being increased because of the sympathetic pathway. But the problem is sympathetic pathway is in the medulla, okay? And the heart is somewhere very far from the medulla. Okay, now my question is, how will the information from the sympathetic pathway to the medulla reach? Okay, I'll give you an example. I'm staying here in Hyderabad and my mother stays in Visakhapatnam. So how do I and my mother communicate with each other? The logic is simple. We communicate with each other with the help of a telephone, right? Now, how these telephones work? Through the networking, okay? In our body, we have this great networking system, which is nothing but the nervous system. So in the same way, for the medulla or the sympathetic nervous system, rather, to send the information from the brain to the heart, it will use a source which is nothing but the thoracic vertebra. Okay, it uses T1 to T4 in order to send the information. In the same way, the parasympathetic sympathetic nervous system, whenever it wants to send information to decrease the heart rate, it will use the vagus nerve as a networking channel. Okay, I hope you're understanding. In the sympathetic nervous system, what actually is happening? The information to increase the heart rate is being sent to the heart with the help of the T4, 1 to 4 vertebra. And in the parasympathetic nervous system, in order to decrease the heart rate, the vagus nerve is coming into action. The vagus nerve will carry information from the parasympathetic pathway to the heart to decrease the heart rate. Now, how do you remember this? Right. So I've come up with this short form, which is nothing but SIT. Now, what is this SIT? S here stands for sympathetic. Okay. And I stands for increase. And lastly, we have T, which is nothing but the thoracic vertebra. Okay. So SIT is sympathetic. I stands for increase in the heart rate, and T is the first 4 thoracic vertebra. And coming to the parasympathetic, we have a short form is nothing but precious diamonds value. What is this precious diamonds value? If we take the first letters, P over here stands for parasympathetic nervous system, and D stands for the decrease in the heart rate, and V finally stands for the vagus. Okay, so in the parasympathetic nervous system, there is decrease in the heart rate, and this decrease is being occurring through the vagus nerve. Okay, simple, just remember it like this. I've tried to make it as simple as possible so that you can remember it properly. If you think this makes no sense, I am helpless. I'm so sorry. Okay, right. So yeah, we have a question right here popping on our screen. This question was actually posted in the WhatsApp group, and as I've mentioned, majority of the students have answered it wrong. Okay, so the question over here is, which neural pathway primarily influences the heart rate? This is quite tricky question. Read the question properly. Which pathway is influencing your heart rate? Is it the parasympathetic nervous system? Is it the autonomic nervous system? Is it the vagus nerve or is it the sympathetic nerve? I want you people to answer down in the comments section. Okay. I'll give you the explanation. I'll give you the explanation of the answer. Don't worry. For now, just answer down whatever you think the answer is right. Okay. Okay, fine. We have comments. Someone commented ANS, someone commented PNS. Okay. Okay, fine. I'm waiting. I want someone to answer it properly. Don't disappoint me, please. We've been talking about the concept since the beginning, so I don't want you people to give wrong answers. Okay, it's quite simple. Just use your knowledge or just remember what I've said. Okay, heart rate is being influenced by what? Is it the parasympathetic pathway, the autonomic nervous system, vagus nerve, or the sympathetic nervous system? Right. We'll talk about the answer. Actually, the answer is all the four options which are given here are correct. Okay. Now you people might be thinking, how? See, parasympathetic pathway that we have over here. The parasympathetic pathway that we have over here, it definitely influences the heart rate. There's no doubt about it. It actually decreases the heart rate that we have discussed. And coming to the sympathetic nervous system, it also influences the heart rate. It actually increases the heart rate. Now coming to the vagus nerve is a component of the parasympathetic pathway, which helps in decreasing the heart rate. And coming to the option B, which is ANS is nothing but these two components, the PNS and the SNS, are the components of autonomic nervous system. So technically, all the four answers are right. So your parasympathetic system, it decreases your heart rate. The sympathetic nervous system increases your heart rate. The vagus nerve is a component of the parasympathetic pathway, which actually helps in decreasing of the heart rate. And the autonomic nervous system finally has two branches, which are nothing but the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. So all the four answers over here are right. Now, we'll see in detail how the sympathetic nervous system is acting and how the parasympathetic nervous system is acting. Okay. Now, firstly, we'll go with the sympathetic nervous system. Okay. So yeah, in the sympathetic nervous system, as we have discussed, what actually is happening? The heart rate is being increased in the sympathetic pathway. Now, how is this heart rate being increased in the sympathetic pathway? That we'll see in the diagram behind me. Yeah, so firstly, what actually happens is when the heart or the body demands for more oxygen, or maybe the body demands for more blood, what actually happens is the heart will send some sensory information to the medulla. Okay, so there is some sensory information going to medulla. Now my question is, what is this sensory information that is going to medulla, and also how is this sensory information going to the medulla? Okay, in the heart, if you see, the heart constitutes of aorta and the carotid sinus. We all know that, right? So in the aorta and the carotid sinus, we have two important components which are nothing but the baroreceptors and the chemoreceptors. Now, what are these baroreceptors and what are these chemoreceptors? So, baroreceptors are responsible for any change in the pressure. So, if any pressure is being increased or maybe being decreased, then the baroreceptors get activated. Coming to the chemoreceptors, so chemoreceptors, what they do is if there is any change in the proportion or in the value or in the amount of oxygen or carbon dioxide in the blood, then the chemoreceptors get activated. That is, if the oxygen or the carbon dioxide levels in the blood are being increased or being decreased, immediately the chemoreceptors will get activated. So let's just say a person is exercising. Now, when a person is exercising, two things will definitely happen. Number one is there will be decreased oxygen levels. So there will be decreased oxygen levels in the blood. Okay. Besides the decreased oxygen levels, one more thing that will happen, which is there will be pressure differences. Okay, that is there will be increase in the pressure. The blood pressure increases. So when there is this change in the pressure and when there is this change in the oxygen levels present in the body, immediately our very own baroreceptors and the chemoreceptors gets activated. Now, once these baroreceptors and the chemoreceptors gets activated, what these actually do is they will take this information from the heart to the medulla. Okay, why medulla? Because medulla has the cardio-regulatory centers. Okay, that is why the information from the heart will be taken to the medulla only. Okay, right. Now, right. Here we have the medulla in color black. Okay, this medulla has two centers as we have already discussed. It has the parasympathetic, which is the inhibitory center. It has the sympathetic, which is the excitatory center or the acceleratory center rather. Okay, now we want the heart rate to increase in this situation because the person is rather in a physical activity. We want the heart rate to increase. So obviously, this sensory information, whatever is being gone to the medulla, it will go to the sympathetic or it will trigger the sympathetic nervous system. Okay. Now, once the sympathetic nervous system gets activated, we have already discussed the information from the sympathetic pathway to the brain will be synced with the help of the first four thoracic vertebra. I hope you still remember the SIT. S-I-T. S stands for sympathetic, I stands for increase in the heart rate, T stands for thoracic vertebra. So, yeah. Right? So, we have the thoracic vertebra down over here. Okay? We have the four thoracic vertebra over here. Okay. We have T1, we have T2, we have T3, T4 finally. Okay. Now, the information from the medulla, okay, it will come down to the thoracic vertebra. Now, once it reaches the thoracic vertebra, what this thoracic vertebra will do is, it will send information to the heart. Now, how will the information be sent to the heart is, this four thoracic vertebra, the first four thoracic vertebra actually innervate the heart at different locations. Now, what are these different locations? It firstly innervates the SA node. This is the SA node that we have over here. It innervates the SA node. It innervates the AV node. Okay, this is the AV node. It innervates the AV node, and then finally it innervates the musculature of the ventricles. I hope you're understanding. Initially, we wanted the heart rate to increase. So for the heart rate to increase, a sensory information was sent because the baroreceptors and the chemoreceptors were activated. So these will send the information to the sympathetic nervous system is present in the medulla. Okay. Now, once the sympathetic nervous system gets activated, it will activate or the information will be sent to the first four thoracic vertebra. And these thoracic vertebra innervate the heart at different levels, which are SA node, AV node, and the musculature of the ventricles or the ventricular musculature rather. Okay. Now, what does these do over here? Okay. We'll just talk about some basic parts of the nodes. Okay. So if we talk about the SA node and the AV node, every part, every element that's present in our body constitutes of cells. In the same way, the SA node And the AV node also has cells within them. And these cells are called as the nodal cells. Okay. So if you draw a nodal cell over here, see, the nodal cells constitutes of more negative particles inside them, okay, and more positive particles outside them, okay, right. So why I'm focusing more on this negative and the positive particles is very important, okay. The components that are present outside the cell are sodium and calcium. The components that are present inside the cell are potassium, okay. I hope you people can see the diagram, or else I'll just draw it in the tab only, because this is very important. If you don't understand this, you will not understand the concept properly. Right, we will again draw our nodal cell over here. This is the nodal cell that we have, okay? And this nodal cell, it constitutes of a lot of negative particles inside the cell. It constitutes of a lot of positive particles outside the cell, okay? And one more thing that you have to remember about this nodal cell is the nodal cell inside it constitutes of potassium and outside it constitutes of sodium and calcium. Okay, now physiologically what actually happens is in order to maintain a heart rate, one thing will happen. Now you people might be confused at that. In the start of the video, I have said that the heart rate is maintained by the nervous system, which is the medulla, or you can also say the medulla. Now, why am I saying that the heart rate is being controlled by the nodes? See, the answer is simple. The medulla is considered as a very rich CUO, okay? Consider medulla as a very rich CUO. And this CUO has many offices, okay? Many offices. So each office cannot be directly visited by the CUO medulla every single time. So what the CUOs usually do? They will arrange some heads in each office, right? We have heads in every office, okay? In the same way, the medulla's function is to regulate or maintain the heart rate. Maintain the heart rate. Now, to maintain this heart rate, what it will do is it will set a head in the heart. It will set a head in the heart, and this head is nothing but the pacemaker, which is the SA node. And of course, the AV node and the ventricular musculature are also very important in order to maintain the heart rate. Okay, so don't get confused. Medulla is the ultimate owner, or you can say the boss of the heart rate regulation. It has the subordinates which are located in the heart in order to maintain this heart rate. Okay, right. We'll just go back to the example, or we'll just go back to the nodal cells. Okay, right. Coming back to the nodal cell, now what actually happens is, so physiologically, in order to maintain the heart rate, what actually happens is the sodium cells, whatever are present outside the cell, they try to enter into the cell. Okay, see, there is this ratios that are maintained in the heart. Okay, you have different ratios, minus 55, minus 40, 0, plus 20. Okay, so usually the heart rate will be maintained over here, okay, 55. And if it crosses 40, okay, 40 is our threshold. If this 40 is crossed, then the heart rate will increase. And if it drops down the 40, the minus 40, then the heart rate will come down. Remember it? Simply, when the heart or when the polarization is crossing the minus 40, the heart rate will increase. And once it gets down minus 40, then the heart rate will decrease. Okay, right. So what actually happens is when the sodium and the calcium enters into the cell, what actually happens is a lot of positivity will increase inside the cell. See, now we have sodium, calcium, okay, potassium inside the cell. So initially what we have discussed, that the anodal cell inside it constitutes of negative particles. Of course, there will be positive particles also. The potassium itself is a positive particle here. Okay. But if you compare the ratio between the positive and the negative particles inside the cell, the negative particles are more inside the cell. And outside the nodal cell, the positive particles are more. Okay. Now what is happening? The sodium and calcium, which are positive particles, are entering into the cell. So because of this, a lot of positivity inside the cell is being increased. Okay. Now once this positivity increases, what actually happens? It was in minus 55, right? Starting. Now the positivity has increased. So it will start to go up. It will reach, or it will cross the threshold rather, and it will go further beyond the threshold. Okay. Now, this is called as depolarization. Okay. I hope you're understanding. We have the nodal cells. So the calcium and the sodium particles, whatever are present outside the cell, are entering into the cell, making the cell from inside more positive, as a result of which, what is happening? The ratio is being increased and there is depolarization. And depolarization is nothing but when there is depolarization, there will be increase in the heart rate. Now the heart rate has increased. Now it's also the heart's responsibility or the pacemaker's responsibility to bring back the heart rate. Now what it will do? It will, the sodium, the potassium particles, whatever are present inside this cell, what they'll do is they'll try to come out of the cell. Okay, because I hope you understand. See, the cell here, now it has sodium, potassium, and calcium. Okay, a lot of positivity. Now what the potassium will do, it will start to come out of this cell. Okay, it was inside the cell. Now what it will do is it will try to come out of the cell to decrease the positivity inside the cell, because potassium is also a positive element. It will try to come out of the cell to decrease the positivity that is present in the cell. As the positivity is being decreased because the potassium is coming out of the cell, what will happen? Again, there will be this negativity present in the cell. So again, there will be this drop. There will be drop here in the heart rate. This is nothing but repolarization. Okay, this is repolarization. What is repolarization? Decrease in the heart rate. Okay, I hope you're understanding. Simply remember one thing: we have the nodal cells. In the nodal cells, inside there is more negative charge, and outside there is more positive charge. Okay, to increase the heart rate, the sodium and the calcium should enter into the cell. In order to decrease the heart rate, the potassium should come out of the cell. Simple. Remember it that. Okay, so this is quite basic. Okay, this is quite basic. This is completely physiological that's happening in our body. Now we have to relate this with the sympathetic nervous system, whatever we are discussing. Now I'll show you how to relate this. Right. As we have seen, the four thoracic vertebrae, I hope you still remember what has happened till here. Okay. The fourth thoracic vertebra has innervated the heart at different levels, which is the SA node, AV node, and the ventricular musculature. Right. Now, what it will do is this thoracic vertebra, it will actually, the sympathetic nervous system itself, it will release a particle, or you can say a hormone, which is, or a regulator rather, which is nothing but the norepinephrine. The norepinephrine. The sympathetic pathway will release the norepinephrine. Now, why is this norepinephrine being released? This norepinephrine, what it will do is, it will combine, or it will bind up with the beta 1 receptor. Beta 1 receptor. Okay, this beta 1 receptor, where is it present is, it's present in the SA node. It will bind up with this beta 1 receptor, and what it will do, it will allow the nodal cell, whatever is there, see, we have the nodal cell over here. So what we have discussed, to increase the heart rate, more and more sodium and the calcium should enter into the cell, right? So what this norepinephrine will do, it will bind up with this beta 1 receptor, and it will allow more and more sodium and calcium to enter into the cell. So once the sodium and the calcium are entering abundantly into the cell, obviously what will happen? The heart rate will increase. There will be depolarization, and hence the heart rate will increase. Okay, that's how the heart rate increases. Okay, that's why it innervates with the SA node and the AV node. If you see over here, it also innervates with the ventricular musculature. Now, why is it innervating with the ventricular musculature? The reason is simple. What it will do is it will make the ventricles to contract stronger. It will increase the force of contraction of the ventricular musculature in order to produce more heart rate and more blood. Okay, so that is the sympathetic pathway. I hope you understood the sympathetic pathway. It's simple. I just give us little brushing. Okay. So initially the sensory information to raise the heart rate was sent to the medulla. The sympathetic nervous system got activated because the heart rate has to increase. The sympathetic nervous system will send information to the first four thoracic vertebra. This four thoracic vertebra will innervate heart at three different levels. And what they'll do, the sympathetic nervous system will release norepinephrine, which will actually bind up with beta 1 receptor, and this will allow more amount of calcium and sodium channels to enter into the nodal cell, as a result of which finally the heart rate is increasing. Okay, that is the sympathetic nervous system. Okay, now we have the parasympathetic nervous system. Now, what is the parasympathetic nervous system? The same mechanism will happen, but a reverse, okay? A reverse mechanism, not the exact same mechanism, a reverse mechanism will happen. Right. Now the heart rate has increased beyond the limit. Now the body wants to bring down the heart rate to normal. Okay. Now what it will do is, in order to bring down the heart rate to normal, it will actually send again the sensory information. But this time the sensory information will go to the parasympathetic nervous system, because now we want to decrease the heart rate. Initially, we wanted to increase the heart rate, so the information was sent to the sympathetic pathway. But now, because we want to decrease the heart rate, the information will be sent to the parasympathetic pathway. Okay. Now, again, the information which is being sent is through the baroreceptors and the chemoreceptors because of the pressure changes. Okay, the pressure is being fallen down. Okay, that's where what happens. The baroreceptors will send the information to the parasympathetic nervous system. Now, the parasympathetic nervous system has this sensory information, which is the heart rate has to be decreased. Now, what this parasympathetic nervous system does, we all know. I hope you still remember. Okay, precious diamonds value. What is this precious diamonds value? So P here stands for parasympathetic. Okay. D stands for decrease. And V stands for vagus. Okay. Now, our very own vagus nerve, the cranial nerve, will come into action. Okay. Now, what this vagus nerve will do is, this vagus nerve will take in the information. Okay, it will take in the information and it will release a hormone which is nothing but the acetylcholine. So in the sympathetic pathway, noradrenaline was released, and here in the parasympathetic pathway, the acetylcholine will be released by the vagus nerve. Again, this acetylcholine, what it will do is, see, the vagus nerve, just like the T4 vertebra, the T first four vertebra, what it will do is, it will again, this is the vagus nerve we have, okay? Vagus. Okay. This vagus nerve again will innervate the heart at different levels, which is the SA node, AV node, and the musculature of the ventricles. Okay. Now, what this vagus nerve will do, or the parasympathetic nervous system rather would do, is it will release the acetylcholine. This acetylcholine will bind with the beta 1 receptors again. Okay. Okay. It will again bind with the beta 1 receptors. Now, after binding with the receptors, what actually happens in the nodal cells is, so in the sympathetic part of what happened, more and more calcium and the sodium channels entered into the cell, making more positivity inside in order to increase the heart rate. But here now we want to decrease the heart rate. So what will happen? The sodium, the potassium, whatever is present in the cell, it will start to come out of the cell. Now, why is this potassium coming out? See, simple logic. The sodium and the calcium has entered, making it more positive. Okay. The potassium was also initially over here. Potassium is also a positive particle. It was also initially inside the cell. But because of this higher positivity, what this potassium will do is, in order to decrease the heart rate, it will start to come out of the heart cell to make it more negative. Okay. See, for example, let's just say there are a total of 100 positive particles inside the cell, and let's just say there are some 50 negative particles inside the cell. Okay. Now, among these 100 particles, 50 or maybe let's just say 60 particles are potassium particles. Okay. Now, from the 60 particles, what happened? 50 particles have come out. 50 potassium particles have come out of the cell. So, what actually happened? The positive cell that we have over here will decrease. So, here it was initially 100, right? So now we'll have only 50 positive particles inside the cell because 50 potassium particles which are positive has come out of the cell, making the cell again negative. I hope you're understanding, don't get confused. Lot of positivity got increased within the cell. So in order to decrease this positivity inside the cell, the positive particles, which are the potassium particles, one of the positive particles, has started to come out of the cell, making inside of the cell negative. Now, once the cell again goes to negative, what will happen? Obviously, there will be repolarization, which is nothing but decrease in the heart rate. The heart rate is being decreased now. Okay. I hope you understood what sympathetic pathway is, what parasympathetic pathway is. This is because, see, we have various regulations in the body. There's no doubt about it. Like we have the hormonal regulation, we have vasomotor regulation, but ultimately the hormonal and the vasomotor regulations also rely on this pathway only. The pathway doesn't change. The elements that are triggering the heart rate will decrease. In the hormonal regulation, what actually happens is the hormones influence or maybe trigger the heart rate regulation. In the vasomotor, it is the baroreceptor that influence the heart rate or the heart rate regulation or trigger the heart rate regulation rather. But the pathway through which it's being achieved will be always same. Okay, right. So that is about the sympathetic and the parasympathetic pathway. So we have a diagram over here of the pathway. Okay, let's go down. Okay, one more question we have. This was also posted actually in the WhatsApp. Okay, right. So now that you know the sympathetic and the parasympathetic pathway, I really believe that you will be in a capability to answer this question. Okay. So yeah, the question is, during exercise, which part of the autonomic nervous system typically becomes more dominant in regulating the heart rate to meet the increased demand? Read the question properly. We are asking about the increased demand. Is it the central nervous system? Is it the somatic nervous system? Is it the parasympathetic nervous system or the sympathetic nervous system? Comment down below. I will explain you the answer. Okay. This question also got mostly wrong answers only in the WhatsApp. So by now you know what the concept of sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system is. So I want you people to answer the correct answer now. Okay. Right. Yeah, I'm seeing your comments. Sympathetic. I'm very happy. Thank you so much. So I've understood that you have understood the concept. Okay, it's always the sympathetic nervous system which increases the heart rate, which is SIT. And the parasympathetic nervous system, which is precious diamonds value, will always decrease your heart rate. Right. We'll go to the next slide. Right. Now coming to the vasomotor regulation. Now, what is this vasomotor regulation? Vasomotor regulation is nothing but the baroreflex. Okay, so baroreflex. When I say baroreflex, most people actually correlate this baroreflex with BP regulation. Right. See, there's no wrong in correlating the baroreflex with the BP regulation because the primary function of the baroreflex is definitely to decrease the BP only. But one thing, remember, BP, the blood pressure and the heart rate are directly proportional to each other. That is, if there is increase in the blood pressure, there will obviously be increase in the heart rate. And if there is decrease in decrease in the heart rate. Okay, so they are directly proportional. So when the baroreflex is starting, or maybe it's getting initiated, what actually happens is it will try to decrease the, or maybe increase the blood pressure. Ultimately, when the blood pressure is being altered, obviously the heart rate will also get altered. So that is about the baroreflex. Okay, baroreflex is not just confined for the BP regulation. If someone asks you what is the primary function of the baroreflex, you can say the primary function of baroreflex is BP regulation. But baroreflex indirectly also acts on the heart rate regulation. Now we'll see how this baroreflex is actually controlling the BP heart rate regulation. Okay. Right. So we all know that the heart, or rather the carotid sinus and the aorta, constitutes of the receptors which are nothing but the baroreceptors. I hope you can see over here. We have baroreceptors over here. The aorta and the carotid sinus constitutes of the baroreceptors. Now, what are these baroreceptors? As I've already mentioned, baroreceptors are pressure-sensitive receptors. The pressure sensitive receptors. So whenever there is this alteration in the pressure, like if the pressure is being increased or when the pressure is being decreased, there will be triggering of the baroreceptors. See, as I've mentioned, the pathway that is going to the brain will always be same, but the elements that are triggering the regulation of heart rate will vary. Here, in terms of the baroreflex, to regulate the heart rate, what actually happens is the baroreceptors, or maybe the blood pressure, will be altered. This altered blood pressure will trigger the baroreflex, and this baroreflex will use the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system again in order to maintain or regulate the heart rate. Okay, I hope you're getting the point. So initially, previously, when we were discussing about the neural regulation of the heart rate, the autonomic nervous system regulation of the heart rate. So what actually we have spoken? We have said that the baroreceptors and the chemoreceptors gets triggered, and once when they get triggered, they will send the information to the medulla. They'll send the corresponding information to the medulla. Like if you want to accelerate, it will go to the acceleratory centers. If you want to inhibit, it will go to the inhibitory centers, and as a result of which the heart rate will be maintained. Again, the same thing happens over here. The BP was changed over here. The blood pressure got altered over here. For example, let's just say the blood pressure is so high. The blood pressure became very high. Now, what it will do in order to bring back the blood pressure down, the baroreceptors firstly will get altered, because obviously the baroreceptors, whatever are present in the carotid sinus and the aorta, will undergo stretching. They'll get triggered. Once they get triggered, they'll understand that, okay, the blood pressure is too high now. Now the blood pressure has to come down. So what it will do, it will send the collaterals to the medulla. Okay. Where in the medulla, it will send the information to the parasympathetic nervous system. PSNS, the parasympathetic nervous system. Now, once the information goes to the parasympathetic nervous system to reduce the heart rate, again, the information from the vagus nerve will reach the heart. Okay, so the vagus nerve, again, it will release the acetylcholine. Okay, will release the acetylcholine, and this acetylcholine again, it will bind up with the beta-1 regulators, and then again the neural, the nodal cell change, whatever has taken place, it will again take place, and then again the heart rate will come back to normal. But the thing that you'll have to remember over here is, see, by now people might have understood that baroreflex is nothing but a sympathetic pathway only, but the triggering is changing. That is the BP. Because of the BP, the pathway has got initiated. That you might have understood by now. But the question over here is, there are some series of events that happen in the baroreflex, which is, see, if you go to the neural pathway, it was just the anodal cells, it was just the nodal cells that got influenced, and the muscular contracture of the muscular ventricular musculature, sorry, has undergone contraction, and as a result of which the heart rate got altered. Okay. Now here what will happen is, here the heart rate will increase. Along with the heart rate, the stroke volume will increase. The stroke volume and the heart rate which are being increased will be very rapid. There will be this very rapid increase in the heart rate, stroke volume, and the muscular contraction, of course, the ventricular musculature contraction. And also one more thing, there will be vasodilation. So if you want to increase the heart rate, what actually happens over here is there will be vasodilation. The additional thing that you see over here is vasodilation. The stroke volume gets increased, the muscular contraction gets rapidly increased, and along with that, there will be vasodilation. In the same way, if you want the heart rate to decrease, which is if you want the BP to decrease, you're alternatively or indirectly actually decreasing the heart rate. So here what will happen is, again, the information will be sent to the medulla, and it will reach the sympathetic pathway. Now you want to increase the heart rate, right? So in order to increase the heart rate, what actually happens, the sympathetic nervous system gets activated, and this sympathetic nervous system, what it will do, again, it will release norepinephrine, it will bind up with the beta-1 regulators, and then the nodal thing will happen, and now what will happen is the heart rate will increase. See, simple logic, if the heart rate has to increase, along with the heart rate, the stroke volume and vasodilation takes place. And if you want to decrease the heart rate, there will be this vasoconstriction, and also there will be this decrease in the stroke volume. I hope I'm not confusing you. Okay. So yeah, simply if you want to increase the heart rate, obviously there has to be vasodilation. You all know vasodilation leads to increase or accumulation of a lot of blood within. Okay. So to decrease the heart rate, there has to be vasoconstriction. Okay. So that's about the vasomotor regulation. So vasomotor regulation is nothing but the baroreflex. Nothing but the baroreflex. And always remember, baroreflex is not just confined to the BP, but it indirectly acts on the heart rate. Directly acts on the heart rate. And this baroreflex is a short-term process, okay? It's a short-term process. That is, see, one more thing about the baroreflex. Remember, if a patient's blood pressure is 120/80, this is normal, right? So what this baroreflex will do, it will only get triggered once if there is change in this 120/80. Either if this 128/80 is being increased or decreased, then the baroreflex will take place. If, for example, let's just say there is this hypertensive patient, okay? Now, when there is this hypertensive patient, let's just say its heart rate is 150/90, okay? So what actually will happen? Now, the body or the baroreflex, it will set to this value. So if there is any increase in 150/90 or decrease in 150/90, then only the baroreflex will start. I hope you're understanding. In the normal patient, it's always the 120/80 for which the baroreflex starts. And if the hypertensive patient is present, okay, then what the baroreflex will do, it will adjust to that hypertensive state only, hypertensive ratio only. Okay, right. So that's about the baroreflex. Okay, so we have a diagram. Yeah. Coming back to one more question. Which of the following statement is true about baroreflex? Okay. Firstly, we have it helps in the regulation of the heart rate. It helps in the maintenance of BP. It helps in both A and B, which is maintenance of BP and regulation of heart rate. Baroreceptors are primarily located in the heart. So I want you people to comment down below. Okay. So yeah, the answer over here is actually C. As I've already mentioned, baroreceptors or the baroreflex is not just confined to the BP, is also confined to the heart rate. Like it indirectly alters the heart rate. Okay, right. Now coming to the last type of regulation, which is the hormonal regulation. Now, in the hormonal regulation, we have various hormones that are present in our body, okay? So, different hormones react differently in the body, okay? Like we have epinephrine, we have norepinephrine, we have aldosterone, thyroid hormone, vasopressin. See, there are some stress hormones and there are some non-stressful hormones which actually make us feel calm, okay? So, whenever stressful hormones are being increased, obviously there will be increase in the heart rate. And when the non-stressful hormones are being released, there will be decrease in the heart rate. Okay. So here we have epinephrine, non-epinephrine, aldosterone, thyroid hormone, and vasopressin. They actually lead to increase in the heart rate. The heart rate will increase because of these hormones. So coming to the thyroid hormone, there are a lot of hormones being secreted by thyroid. So the hormone is responsible for increase in the heart rate is thyroxine. The thyroxine. T4. Okay, thyroxine is responsible for increase in the heart rate. Now, how do you remember these hormones? Okay, we have a lot of hormones to remember. So, how do we actually remember these hormones? I have a shortcut for that. Okay, so the short form is the elephants. The elephants never visit Antarctica. Okay. So the elephants never visit Antarctica. If you take the first words, we have T, which is the thyroxine or thyroid hormone. E is the epinephrine. N is the norepinephrine. And B over here is the vasopressin. And A over here is the aldosterone. So the elephants never visit Antarctica is a short form which you can remember. And these hormones actually lead to the increase in heart rate. Now, how are these hormones being causing the increase in the heart rate? Again, the answer is same. See, these hormones, when they release these heart rate increasing hormones, they trigger the sympathetic nervous system. So once the sympathetic nervous system triggers, it sends information to the first four thoracic vertebra. And once the first four thoracic vertebra takes the information in, they will release norepinephrine. It will bind with the beta 1 receptors, and then there will be increase in the heart rate, right? So that's how the heart rate will be increased with the help of these hormones. Okay. Now we have acetylcholine, which actually decreases the heart rate. Okay, the heart rate will be decreased by acetylcholine. Okay. Now, this actually brings us to the end of the session. Okay. Now, lastly, I have one thing to answer you all. Like, actually, when I have decided this topic, a colleague of mine actually told me that, Amrita, when you're talking about this topic, you should be very sure, like you should say the topic in such a way that everyone should know the importance of heart rate regulation, because people think that heart rate regulation is just confined to the cardio students and it's not important to the ortho department or something like that. Maybe the neuro students might feel little interested to know about the heart rate regulation, but the cardio students have, the ortho students, however, might not feel very interested. That's what my colleague told me. See, my answer to that is simple. Doesn't matter what department you belong to. You might be belonging to the ortho department, geriatric department, pediatric department, or the gynae department. Every single person should know about the heart rate regulation. The reason is simple. Let's just say we have a case of intertrochanteric fracture. Okay. We have a case of intertrochanteric fracture. It's a post-immobilization case. Okay. The post-immobilization. So when this case comes to us, the only thing that we focus on is the limb movements. We try to make the patient as mobile as possible, recover as fast as possible and think, but we don't give note to the other relying risk factors that we have. So whenever we take the assessment also, what we do is in the risk factors, we either mention the diabetes or the blood pressure. We don't ask for the rest of the things. Now let's just say this patient who has this intertrochanteric fracture, who is in the post-mobilization phase, has hyperthyroidism. Okay, has hyperthyroidism. Now, once the patient has hyperthyroidism, that means that there is this increase in the thyroid hormone. Okay. Once there is increase in the thyroid hormone, that means thyroid is a hormone which actually increases the heart rate. So naturally, this patient has increased heart rate. Now, if you give this patient vigorous exercises, obviously the heart rate will increase furthermore. Okay, this you're not actually recovering the patient, you're actually making the patient more deteriorate. Okay, so you should eliminate that, right? So whenever a patient comes to you, learn or just know what are the underlying the conditions the patient is having. If not the hyperthyroidism, let's just say the patient is having hyperkalemia. So we all know hyperkalemia is a condition which is characterized by increase in the sodium levels in the body. So when a patient with hyperkalemia comes to us, because it is a condition which is completely because of the potassium levels increase in the body, the first thing that crosses our mind is the patient might be having a CKD. Because, see, it is the kidney's function to actually regulate the potassium levels in our body. Once the kidneys fail to do their job, then either the potassium levels increase or the potassium levels decrease. Obviously, there is no wrong about thinking of the CKD the patient might be having CKD or something like that. You can think that, but one more thing here the patient's neglect is if the patient has hyperkalemia, there is high chance that the patient might have bradycardia. How? We'll go back to the nodal cells. So if you go back to our nodal cells, we have a cell over here. So inside the cell, we had potassium cells, right? Now, this patient has hyperkalemia wherein there is a lot of potassium inside the cell. So now when there is a lot of potassium inside the cells, the potassium that goes out of the cells also increases. The more amount of potassium is going out of the cell. When more amount of potassium is going out of the cell, what will happen? There will be repolarization. That is, there will be decrease in the heart rate. Okay, there will be decrease in the heart rate. So the patient will be having bradycardia. Let's just say now the patient is having hypokalemia. So if the patient has hypokalemia, the patient will be having tachycardia. Why? Again going back to the nodal cell. Okay, now the patient has very less potassium inside the cell. Okay, now what will happen because the patient is having a very low amount of potassium here? See, this potassium, when it goes out of the cell, it will cause actually the depolarization. How? The thing is, consider this potassium as a brake. Okay, brake of a car or bike or whatever. So when the brakes of a car or a bike damage, what actually happens? You cannot control or you cannot like bring down the speed of the vehicle. The only thing is the vehicle speed increases. So this potassium is like the brake. Now, once this brake, the potassium fails, there will be increase in the heart rate because there is this decrease in the potassium levels in the body. There will be increase in the heart rate. So the patient might be having tachycardia. The reason why I'm saying this is doesn't matter what condition the patient comes to you, you should know about all these things because ultimately there are various factors in the body which correlate with the heart. Now, if the patient is having hypokalemia, and if I'm unaware of it, like I'm not giving a good importance to that, and I'm giving vigorous activity to the patient, what will the patient's heart rate go? It will go further high, and the patient might end up with heart failure. Okay, so you'll have to take all these things into consideration while you're treating a patient. So doesn't matter what department you belong to, doesn't matter if you're a UG or a PG or a PhD student, you should always know the heart rate regulation. Okay. So lastly, we have the last question, which is which of the following is associated with decrease in the heart rate? Okay, we have epinephrine, we have vasopressin, we have acetylcholine, we have aldosterone. Comment down the answer below. Okay. Yeah, so the answer is acetylcholine. I hope you still remember the answers. The elephants never visit Antarctica. So here we don't have the acetylcholine, and the acetylcholine is something which decreases the heart rate. So that brings us to the end of the webinar. Amir sir, I think you can continue now.
Hello everybody, a warm evening to every student who has joined this webinar. I expect that each and everybody have got a basic understanding on the topic, and I've also seen that a lot of students participating very well. Firstly, congratulations for the participation and deciding the feast of learning for yourself. So we at Prakara Learning are into the paramedical edutech domain in which we provide exclusive courses for physiotherapy students in which we have first year BPT curriculum module which is available in terms of interactive and engaging video lectures by our subject matter experts. You get student notes completely including the anatomy diagrams, which is the most vital topic for any of the first year students, and you get MCQs for your self assessment and also the key terms for your terminological understanding. And as the exams are coming nearby for the second, third, and the fourth year students, we have designed the exam modules which will not only be helping them to score well in their examination, but also will be giving them a concept clarity, classified information to score well in their examinations. If there are any doubts, we also have our live sessions happening in which each and every student can join and clarify this their doubts. And we also have our WhatsApp group in which our dedicated mentors would be present. You can join and you can enjoy this feast of learning by posting your doubts. And to know more, please subscribe our YouTube page and please log into prakara.co.in to get the complete information of the product, or else you can please dial to 7799588833 for more information, such that our mentor would be lifting the call and giving you the complete product understanding, and also we would also be giving you the support access further. I expect each and every student have got a basic knowledge about the heart and the synchronization. If there are any doubts, kindly just get back to us so that we could solve and give you a complete understanding of the things. Good night. Thank you so much for joining, and please take care of yourself. We'll meet soon with a new topic. Thank you.